Good morning, Tarkowski. I'm actually wearing my government hat today. Minister Boni asked me to step in, and as I am a member of the Board of Strategic Advisors to the Prime Minister, and Michał Boni is the head of that board, he asked me to tell you a few words about what we're doing here in the country. Just to give you a little bit of a perspective of PSI in Poland and open government data programs that we are trying to implement from the government perspective. Michał Boni, as Rufus just said, is actually in Brussels today. It was a last-minute thing, but as you know, Poland is now the let's say, performing tasks of the presidency of the EU. There's numerous events going on. Actually, the EU ECOM conference is underway, and simultaneously other events are happening in Brussels. Hence, great apologies that he wasn't able to make it, but I hope to sort of stand in and tell you a little bit about what we're doing in his place. Poland 2030 is a project that we've been working on with Minister Boni for the past 2.5 years. And actually, the reason I want to tell you about it is because, from my personal perspective, 2 years ago I didn't really know too much about open government data. And it was thanks to this program that we understood how important open government data is, and let's say how important it is to us to try to implement the Open Government Data project as soon as possible. In the report, which is available in English and under the address www.polska2030.pl, we try to look at what Poland will look like in the next 20 years. We thought it's a good opportunity to first of all look back. 20 years have passed since 1989, since Poland regained its full independence, and let's say the same period, 20-year period, it's worth looking into what lies ahead. We thought that if we want to catch up, if we want to become at least in the Eurostat data, let's say, analysis, somewhere in between within the EU 15 group, there's a number of challenges that we need to face. And very, very quickly, I'll just mention the 10 challenges that we've identified is competitiveness and utilization of development opportunities that currently Poland and other Central Eastern European countries have, the demographic conditions, occupational activity and adaptiveness of human resources, which actually is pretty high in both Poland and Central Eastern European countries, adequate potential of infrastructure, energy and climate safety, knowledge-based economy and intellectual capital development, solidarity and regional cohesion, social cohesion improvement, efficient state, and growth of Poland's social capital. And it's the latter two, the efficient state and Poland's social capital, that I worked with Minister Boni on. And this is where we've seen the incredible potential of open government data in both creation of efficient state, and that I think is clear, but also growth of Poland's social capital, which unfortunately is among the lowest in all of EU 27. Due to the fact that, let's say, for over 300 years, Poland did not really exist on the map, it was actually a benefit to try to be against the state than try to work with the state, and therefore any form of social activities that we've tried to implement were usually, let's say, relating to opposition rather than cooperation. And open government data, as you well know, is therefore key to try to change that perspective. We try to look at it from, let's say, a perspective of 3 pillars that we have, let's say, built to try to face these challenges that run ahead. And the main pillar that I'd like to tell you about is the innovation pillar. And that is the pillar that is oriented towards development of Poland's new competitive advantage based on KI growth and the utilization of what we call the digital momentum, which would in effect increase competitiveness. Digital momentum is an impact that we hope to implement in order to, in a way, leapfrog from a post-communist country structure to a modern European state. Therefore, if creativity and innovativeness of the economy is in the center of our program within this innovation pillar, then we're looking at, let's say, three elements that are going to influence the creativity and innovativeness. First of all, high-quality education. Second of all, development of entrepreneurship and managerial skills among business executives. And thirdly, competitively high-quality scientific research in cooperation with the economy. This can be turbocharged by two, I think, important predispositions that Poland currently has. First of all, the digital momentum I mentioned, which is the fact that ICT technologies, development of ICT technologies in Poland is quite fast, and we are leapfrogging from a communist paper system to a modern European economy, but also social ambitions, which are extremely high, especially among the young Poles who want to be like the rest, who are extremely ambitious to try to get to where other European countries and their colleagues in European states are. And the reason, let's say, I didn't give you this picture is that one of these, let's say, these ambitions actually ended up in a roundtable discussion that we've implemented in Poland last year to try to talk with different organizations, NGOs, third sector, business groups about the best way in which we can implement the digital momentum and the best way we can try to introduce new regulations to try to foster this, let's say, this movement. And there were several, let's say, topics being discussed. One of them was public sector information, the reuse of public sector information, and generally the type of, let's say, stimulants on the content side that the government can do in order to improve the use of ICT technologies in the country. As a result of these discussions, our Prime Minister actually concluded that it will be this government's plan to try to push out as much of open government data out as possible. And we like this quote because we try to make sure that, and repeat it as often as we can, we try to make sure that he sticks to what he said. And he said, any piece of information created with means of public funds is owned by the public and should be available for reuse by everyone in any manner they please. This was, I think, he initially said it mid, or maybe towards the beginning of this year. And since then, we've actually managed to, let's say, take that a step further into a piece of legislation. We were the last to implement the PSI directive and the European PSI directive. And actually, I'm happy to say that the fact that we implemented it last gave us a little bit of an advantage to see what other countries have done and what we can do further than what the directive said. So apart from implementing all the basic directive requirements, we've tried to go a little bit further. What we've done is we've also changed not only the reuse of, not only have we implemented the directive and introduced reuse provisions, but we've also changed a bit of the access legislation. And right now there are several paths pursuant to which government information can be accessed. One is, of course, through a written application. The second one is through a unique structure that we've had called public information bulletins, which are really e-bulletin boards, which every public entity is required to manage. And therefore there's over 15,000 entities with these online bulletins there. But as bulletins are, very often they are just PDFs posted without nationally readable formats. So the new change that we've made is we've introduced repositories in open catalog formats, and therefore added a new path for access. But a part of access, there are a couple of things that I thought were unique and worthwhile to mention. First of all, there's a presumption of non-restricted reuse of everything that is accessible, which is which wasn't the case in many European countries. Generally, the way we looked at it is, if something is accessible, you can reuse it.
Less than 1 minute.
And if you actually want to reuse it, you can reuse it free of charge. The reasons, let's say, when charges can be incurred are very limited, only limited to one point. When there's a written application and that entity needs to actually cover its incremental costs, requires to produce some specific piece of information, which is, last but not least, there is a limited catalog of conditions, which means that an entity has to deliver the information without any conditions. The only ones admissible are attribution, or the obligation to continue opening up the PSI and making it available not only on the government site, but that of the person who is the reuser. So very limited cases there. And just very quickly, one last sentence. What we are trying to do is we said, okay, fine, we have the open government concept, we have the reuse directive as a implementation tool that is the first start, but we want to go further. And the next piece of legislation that we're trying to work on is what we call legislation on open resources, where we're taking educational, cultural, and scientific resources, which are under directive carved out, or maybe carved out, and we're giving open access to those resources under specific conditions. This law will sort of see light in the fourth quarter of this year. So, sorry. I'll finish there, but if you have any questions about what we're doing and also about open access, I'll have a session on open access and the legislation, proposed legislation tomorrow, so maybe there'll be a chance to talk about it then. Thanks.
So much.